How many self-help books are gathering dust on your shelf right now? If, like most people, you consume countless hours of content, you listen to the podcasts, you watch the YouTube videos, you go to the courses, the workshops, the seminars, yet somehow that information doesn't translate into results. Well, today we're going to dive into what I call the knowledge comfort zone, and I'm going to share with you my 3 strategies on how you can get through this knowing, doing gap. I'm your host, Daniel James, and as always, if you're new here, welcome. So the first point that I want to talk about when it comes to breaking through this self-help paralysis is the consumption implementation gap. I feel like the self-help industry, which I am a part of, I do a lot of public speaking. My main thing is to get this information out there to people that need to hear it so they can get themselves out of the mental prison they've put themselves in. However, the industry as a whole has created what I like to call spiritual materialists, where basically people collect insight, they collect strategies just like items, but they don't actually use them as the tools they're designed. And this then creates this knowing doing gap, because you've got all this information, you've collected all this information, yet you're not using these tools how they're meant to be implemented. They're just sat there. And people talk about knowledge is power. No, knowledge is potential. But if you don't do anything with that potential, that knowledge is useless. So rather than actually collecting this information, we need to understand why we keep collecting it and we don't use it. And oftentimes it's because we're getting more of a dopamine hit from actually studying and learning all this information. We get that high, we get that buzz of like, wow, I didn't know this. This is the bit of information I needed. We get the buzz off that and not actually taking the action. We need to start doing. With all this information that we've got, what's one thing that we can do to take action to move us forward? Because we need to become aware that we're stuck in this knowing, doing gap, because when we're aware of it, we can realize and recognize that we're using knowledge acquisition as a form of procrastination. Let that sink in. Are you using knowledge acquisition as a form of procrastination? Just constantly just saying, I just need this next bit of information, I see this next thing, and then I'll take action. Now, I'm going to link down below and up in the top here of an episode I did about procrastination and how to actually overcome procrastination for good. Now, the second tip I want to share with you is what I call the perfectionism paradox. And this is where perfectionism masquerades as preparation. And you've been there, I've been there. And all this, by the way, is coming from me. Like, I was the self-help expert doing all the workshops, all the podcasts. And it was really interesting. I moved a lot of stuff out of my mum's attic a couple of months ago. And I came across an old notepad. And this old notepad was from 2017. The information that I had in that notebook from 2017 was mind-blowing. It's stuff that only a couple of years ago, I thought I was only learning for the first time. But I already knew it. All the notes were there. I hadn't done anything with it. And just like when we collect objects, it just sat there collecting dust. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm saying all this stuff, this is coming from my own personal experience here. I'm by no means saying that I haven't experienced this, because I absolutely have. Now, anyway, this perfectionism masquerading as preparation causes us to do analysis paralysis, where we're constantly trying to find the next thing. We need to know everything, and everything needs to be perfect before we take action. I need to read this book, I need to read that book, I need to read 10 business books until I actually start a business. Or, do you know what, I need to find the perfect diet, I need to read all the recipes, I need to know all I can about this diet before I start the diet. It's analysis paralysis. And the paradox here lies in the fact that we're in pursuit of perfect knowledge, but that pursuit of perfect knowledge actually prevents us from gaining the knowledge that the real world will teach us by taking action. We can only gain this actual completely game-changing information by taking action, and more importantly, taking action and learning the lessons. Learning the lessons from the mistakes that we make. Because you can read all the business books you want to about how to have a successful business. But until you start a business, until you get that real world action, until you make the mistakes, you're never going to have a business. Because by definition, you haven't started, so you don't have a business. Same when it comes to diet and nutrition. You want to get yourself in shape, get healthy. But we're so busy learning everything we need to know about this nutrition, or what's the best one, that we're still eating rubbish. We're still feeling crap. And again, it makes sense when I talk about it, and it probably makes sense when you're listening to this, yet we all get caught in this trap. And the final and most important one is the implementation framework. Now, this is the implementation framework that I teach my clients and I talk my clients through. And it's about breaking the actions that we need to take into the minimal viable steps. Now, you may have heard this in terms of business, of the minimal viable product. And that's basically where a business will put to market the minimum product that was going to do the job. So they've done all the tests, it works, but it's not perfect. But it's good enough to go to market. And then what they can do is they can tweak it along the way. So you get a lot of this sometimes with computer games where they'll put something out there, it's not finished, but they get game testers to kind of work through all the little niggles they haven't quite got to yet. Because they can't sit there and figure it all out. They know that. They've got to get something out, and then the real world experience, the failures, the lessons, help them learn. So you want the minimal viable steps. So what are the smallest actions that you can take that will move you forward towards the goal or the life that you actually want? Because what this then focuses on is progress over perfection. Because by collecting all this knowledge, we want everything to be perfect. It's not going to be the case. So it's looking at, right, what's the biggest challenge or issue struggling with right now? And with all the information you've got, what's the smallest step that you can take to move you forward in that direction? And it might be, let's just use the nutrition example. It might be that you're just going to stop eating your afternoon chocolate bar. Cool. Because that is a step in the right direction. And what this does is it stops you getting overwhelmed with the fact that everything's got to change and you're going to make this big life overhaul. Small, viable steps. And over time, what's going to happen is this knowledge that you acquire, you'll hear it on a podcast, you'll read it in a book. And what I want you to start getting into the habit of is, right, how can I use this? Whenever I listen to a podcast, at the end of it, I think, right, what have I learned from this? And what action am I going to implement straight away? The smallest viable action I'm going to implement right now. It's going to move me in the direction I want to go. Hope you found this episode useful. Until next time, take it easy.